Kings, the 11th chapter and the first verse. Athaliah of Judah. Oh, Lord. Verse 1. Athaliah was the mother of Ahaziah. When she saw that her son was dead, she took over. She began by massacring the entire royal family. But Jehosheba, daughter of King Jehoram and sister of Ahaziah, took Ahaziah's son Joash and kidnapped him from among the king's sons slated for slaughter. Tongue twister. She hid him in his nurse in a private room away from Athaliah. He didn't get killed. He was there with her, hidden away for 6 years in the temple of God. Athaliah, oblivious to his existence, ruled the country. In the seventh year, Jehoiada sent for the captains of the bodyguards and the palace security force. They met him in the temple of God. He made a covenant with them, swore them to secrecy, and only then showed them the young prince. And he commanded them, "These are your instructions. Those of you who come on duty on the Sabbath and guard the palace, and those of you who go off duty on Sabbath and guard the temple of God, are to join forces at the time of the changing of the guard and form a ring around the young king, weapons at the ready. Kill anyone who tries to break through your ranks. Your job is to stay with the king at all times and places, coming and going." The captains obeyed the orders of Jehoiada the priest. Each took his men, those who came on duty on the Sabbath and those who went off on the Sabbath, and presented them to Jehoiada the priest. The priest armed the officers with spears and shields originally belonging to King David, stored in the temple of God. Well armed, the guards took up their assigned positions for protecting the king from one end of the temple to the other, surrounding both altar and temple. Then the priest brought the prince into view, crowned him, handed him the scroll of God's covenant, and made him king. As they anointed him, everyone applauded and shouted, "Long live the king!" Athaliah heard the shouting of the guards and people and came to the crowd gathered at the temple of God. Astonished, she saw the king standing beside the throne, flanked by the captains and heralds, with everyone beside themselves with joy, trumpets blaring. Athaliah ripped her clothes in dismay and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Jehoiada the priest ordered the military officers, "Drag her outside and kill anyone who tries to follow her." The priest said, "Don't kill her inside the temple of God." So they dragged her out of the palace horse corral. There they killed her. To the palace horse corral. There they killed her. Jehoiada now made a covenant between God and the king and the people. They were God's people. Another covenant was made between the king and the people. The people poured into the temple of Baal and tore it down. I thought you all had already done that. Smashing altar and images to smithereens. I guess you all kept building altars to Baal. They killed Matan, the priest, in front of the altar. Jehoiada then stationed sentries in the temple of God. He arranged for the officers of the bodyguard and the palace security, along with the people themselves, to escort the king down from the temple of God through the gate of the guards and into the palace. There he sat on the royal throne. Everybody celebrated the event, and the city was safe and undisturbed. They had killed Athaliah with the royal sword. Joash was 7 years old when he became king. Wow. The book of 2 Kings, chapter 12, verse 1, Joash of Judah. In the seventh year of Jehu, Joash began his kingly rule. He was king for 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Gazelle. She was from Beersheba. Taught and trained by Jehoiada the priest, Joash did what pleased God for as long as he lived. Even so, he didn't get rid of the sacred fertility shrines. People still frequented them, sacrificing and burning incense. Joash instructed the priests, take the money that is brought into the temple of God for holy offerings, both mandatory offerings and freewill offerings, and keeping a careful accounting to use them to renovate the temple wherever it has fallen into disrepair. But by the 23rd year of Joash's rule, the priests hadn't done one thing. The temple was as dilapidated as ever. King Joash called Jehoiada the priest and the company of the priests and said, "Why haven't you renovated this sorry-looking temple? You are forbidden to take any more money for temple repairs from now on. Hand over everything you get." The priests agreed not to take any more money or to be involved in the temple renovation. Then Jehoiada took a single chest and bored a hole in the lid and placed it in the right of the main entrance into the temple of God. All the offerings that were brought to the temple of God were placed in the chest by the priests who guarded the entrance. When they saw that a large sum of money had accumulated in the chest, the king's secretary and chief priests would empty the chest and count the offerings. They would give the money accounted for to the managers of the temple project. They, in turn, would pay the carpenters, construction workers, masons, stone workers, and the buyers of timber and quarried stone for the repair and renovation of the temple of God. Any expenses connected with fixing up the temple. But none of the money brought into the temple of God was used for liturgical extras, like silver chalices, candle snuffers, trumpets, various gold and silver vessels, etc. It was given to the workmen to pay for their repairing God's temple. And no one even had to check on the men who handled the money given for the project. They were honest men. Offerings designated for compensation offerings and absolution offerings didn't go into the building project. They went directly to the priests. Around this time, Hazael, king of Aram, ventured out and attacked Gath, and he captured it. Then he decided to try for Jerusalem. Joash, king of Judah, countered by gathering up all the sacred memorials, gifts dedicated for holy use by his ancestors, the kings of Judah, Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, along with the holy memorials he himself had received, plus all the gold he could find in the temple and palace storerooms. He sent it to Hazael, king of Aram. Wow. Appeased, Hazael went on his way and didn't bother Jerusalem. Wow. The rest of the life and times of Joash and all that he did are written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. At the last, his palace staff formed a conspiracy and assassinated Joash as he was strolling along the ramp of the fortified outside city wall. Wow. Jozabad, son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer, were the assassins. They sound terrible. And so Joash died and was buried in the family plot in the city of David. His son Amaziah was king after him. 2 Kings chapter 13, a lot of killing. Jehoahaz, king of Israel. In the 23rd year of Joash, son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king of Israel in Samaria, a rule of 17 years. He lived an evil life before God, walking step for step in the tracks of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into a life of sin, swerving neither left or right. Exasperated, God was fierce with Israel, turning them over to Hazael, king of Aram, and Ben-hadad, son of Hazael. This domination went on for a long time. Then Jehoahaz prayed for a softening of God's anger, and God listened. He realized how wretched Israel had become under the brutalities of King Aram. So God provided a savior for Israel who brought them out from under Aram's oppression. The children of Israel were again able to live at peace in their homes, but it didn't make any difference. They didn't change their lives, didn't turn from the Jeroboam sins that now characterize Israel, including the sex and religion shrines of Asherah still flourishing in Samaria. Nothing was left to Jehoahaz's army after Hazael's oppression except for 50 cavalry, 10 chariots, and 10,000 infantry. The king of Aram had decimated the rest, leaving behind him mostly chaff. The rest of the life and times of Jehoahaz, the record of his accomplishments, are written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Jehoahaz died and was buried with his ancestors in Samaria. His son Joash succeeded him as king. Jehoash of Israel. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, became the king of Israel in Samaria, a reign of 16 years. In God's eyes, he lived an evil life. He didn't deviate one bit from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into a life of sin. He plodded along in the same track, step after step. The rest of the life and times of Joash, the record of his accomplishments and his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Jehoash died and joined his ancestors. Jeroboam took over his throne. Jehoash was buried in Samaria in the royal cemetery. Elisha came down sick. It was sickness of which he would soon die. Joash, king of Israel, paid him a visit. When he saw him, he wept openly, crying, my father, chariot and horsemen of Israel. Elisha told him, go and get a bow and some arrows. The king brought him the bow and the arrows. Then he told the king, put your hand on the bow. He put his hand on the bow. Then Elisha put his hand over the hand of the king. Elisha said, now open the east window. He opened it. Then he said, shoot, and he shot. The arrow of God's salvation, exclaimed Elisha, the arrow of deliverance from Aram. You will do battle against Aram until there's nothing left of it. Now pick up the other arrows, said Elisha. He picked them up. Then he said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. Angry with him. Why didn't you hit the ground 5 or 6 times? Well, maybe because you didn't tell me to do that. And probably if I did that, you'd have said I shouldn't have did that. So why are you getting angry? Then you would beat Aram until he was finished. As it is, you'll defeat him three times only. These prophets had some bad tempers. Then Elisha died and they buried him. Sometime later, raiding bands of Moabites, as they often do in the country. One day, some men were burying a man and spotted the raiders. They threw the man into Elisha's tomb and got away. When the body touched Elisha's bones, the man came alive, stood up, and walked out on his 2 feet. Hazael, king of Aram, badgered and bedeviled Israel all through the reign of Jehoahaz. That's terrible. Bedeviled somebody. Wow. But God was gracious and showed mercy to them. He stuck with them out of respect for his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He never gave up on them, nor even considered discarding them. Even to this day, Hazael, king of Aram, died. His son Benadad was the next king. Jehoahaz, son of Jehoahaz, turned things around and took back the cities that Benadad, son of Hazael, had taken from his father Jehoahaz. Jehoash went to war 3 times and defeated him, each time recapturing the cities of Israel. Hopefully everybody understands that. Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jerome, everybody. My goodness. All right, 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 1. Amaziah, king of Judah. This computer's going slow. In the 2nd year of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, son of Joash, became king of Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king. He reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoiadan. Mercy, Jesus. So you have Joash, Jehoahaz, Joash, and Jehoiadan. Mercy. She was from Jerusalem. He lived the way God wanted and did the right thing. But he didn't come up to the standards of his ancestor David. Instead, he lived pretty much as his father Joash had. The local sects and religion shrines continued to stay in business, with people frequenting them. When he had the affairs of the kingdom well in hand, he executed the palace guard that had assassinated his father, the king. But he didn't kill the sons of the assassins. He was obedient to what God commanded, written in the word revealed to Moses, that parents shouldn't be executed for their children's sins. True. Nor children for those of their parents. We each pay personally for our sins. True. Amaziah roundly defeated Edom in the Valley of Salt to the tune of 10,000 dead. In another battle, he took the rock and renamed it Joktheel, the name it still bears. One day, Amaziah sent envoys to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, king of Israel, challenging him to a fight. Come meet with me, I dare you. Let's have it out face to face. Jehoash, king of Israel, replied to Amaziah, king of Judah, one day a little thistle in Lebanon sent a word to a cedar in Lebanon. Give me your daughter to my son in marriage. But then a wild animal of Lebanon passed by and stepped on the thistle, crushing it. Just because you defeated Edom in battle, you think you're now a big shot? Go ahead and be proud, but stay home. Why press your luck? Why bring defeat on yourself and Judah? Amaziah wouldn't take no for an answer, so Joash, king of Israel, gave in and agreed to a battle between him and Amaziah, king of Judah. They met at Beth-Shemesh, a town of Judah. Judah was thoroughly beaten by Israel. All their soldiers ran home in defeat. Joash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, at Beth-Shemesh. But Joash didn't stop there. He went on to attack Jerusalem. He demolished the wall of Jerusalem all the way from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate, a stretch of about 600 feet. He looted the gold and silver and furnishings. Anything that he found was worth taking from both the palace and the temple of God. Y'all are in a backslidden state. And for good measure, he took hostages and then he returned to Samaria. The rest of the life and times of Joash, his significant accomplishments in the fight with Amaziah, king of Judah, are all written in the Chronicles of the king of Israel. Joash died and was buried in Samaria and the cemeteries of the kings of Israel. His son Jeroboam became the next king. Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, continued as king 15 years after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. Now we need to get out of these Joashes and Jehoashes and Jehoahaz and all of that. The rest of the life and times of Amaziah is written in the Chronicles of the kings of Judah. All right, moving on. At the last, they cooked up a plot against Amaziah in Jerusalem, and he had to flee to Lachish. But they tracked him down in Lachish and killed him there. They brought him back on horseback and buried him in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. Azariah, he was only 16 years old at that time, was the unanimous choice of the people of Judah to succeed his father Amaziah as king. Following his father's death, he built and restored Eloth to Judah. So Azariah was the son of Amaziah. Jeroboam II of Israel. In the 15th year of Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, Lord, here we go again, became king of Israel in Samaria. He ruled 41 years. As far as God was concerned, he lived an evil life, never deviated an inch from all the sin of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into a life of sin. But he did restore the borders of Israel at Lebo Hamath in the far north and to the Dead Sea in the south. matching what God, the God of Israel, had pronounced through his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, prophet from Gath-hepher. God was fully aware of the trouble in Israel. It's bitterly hard times. No one was exempt, whether slave or citizen, and no hope of help anywhere was in sight. But God wasn't ready to blot out the name of Israel from history, so he used Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, to save them. The rest of the life and times of Jeroboam, his victories in battle, and how he recovered for Israel both Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah, these are all written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Jeroboam died and was buried with his ancestors in the royal cemetery. His son Zechariah became the next king. The book of 2 Kings, chapter 15, verse 1. Azariah, Uzziah of Judah. Azariah, otherwise known as Uzziah of Judah. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, son of Amaziah, became king in Judah. He was 16 years old when he began his rule, and he was king for 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jecoliah. She was from Jerusalem. He did well in the eyes of God, following the footsteps of his father Amaziah. But he also failed to get rid of the local sects and religion shrines. They continued to be popular with the people. God afflicted the king with a bad skin disease until the day of his death. He lived in the palace, but no longer acted as king. His son Jotham ran the government and ruled the country. The rest of the life and times of Azariah, everything he accomplished, is written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. Azariah died and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. Jotham, his son, was king of Israel after him. Zechariah of Israel. In the 38th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, became king over Israel and Samaria. He lasted only 6 months. Oh, Lord. He lived a bad life before God, no different from his ancestors. He continued in the line of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into a life of sin. Shallum, son of Jabash, conspired against him, assassinated him in public view, and took over as king. The rest of the life and times of Zechariah is written plainly in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. That completed the word that of God that was given to Jehu, namely, for 4 generations your sons will sit on the throne of Israel. Zechariah was the 4th. Shallum of Israel. Shallum, son of Jabash, became king in the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah. He was king in Samaria for only a month. Wow. Manahem, son of Gadai, came up from Tirzah to Samaria. That sounds bad. He attacked Shallum of Jabash and killed him. He then became king. The rest of the life of times of Shallum and the account of conspiracy are written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Manahem of Israel. Using Tirzah as his base, Manahem opened his reign by smashing Tipsha, devastating both the town and its suburbs because they didn't welcome him with open arms. He savagely ripped open all the pregnant women. These are some wicked, nasty, vile, heathenish people, less than human, almost animals, just animals. In the 39th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Manahem, son of Gadai, became king over Israel. He ruled Samaria for 10 years. As far as God was concerned, he lived an evil life. Sin for sin, he repeated the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into a life of sin. Then Tiglath-Pileser III, king of Assyria, showed up and attacked the country. But Manahem made a deal with him. He bought his support by handing over about 37 tons of silver. 37 tons of silver. Wow. He raised the money by making every landowner in Israel pay 50 shekels to the king of Assyria. That satisfied the king of Assyria, and he left the country. The rest of the life and times of Manahem, everything he did, is written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel. Manahem died and joined his ancestors. His son Pekahiah became king. Pekahiah of Israel. In the 50th year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekahiah, son of Manahem, became king of Israel. He ruled in Samaria for 2 years. In God's eyes, he lived an evil life. See there, I thought so. He stuck to the old sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into a life of sin. And then his military aide Pekah, son of Remaliah, conspired against him, killed him in cold blood while he was in his private quarters in the royal palace in Samaria. He also killed Argob the Ariah, 50 Gadites were in the conspiracy with him after he became the next king. The rest of the life and times of Pekahiah, everything he did, is written in the Chronicles of the king of Israel. Pekah of Israel. In the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, became king of Israel and Samaria. He ruled for 20 years. In God's view, he lived an evil life. I thought so. He didn't deviate so much as a hair's breadth from the path laid down by Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into a life sin. My God, is there any righteous? During the reign of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser III, you back again? King of Assyria invaded the country. He captured Ijon, Abel-Beth, Maacah, Genoa, Kedesh, Hazar, Gilead, Galilee, the whole country of Naphtali, and took everyone captive to Assyria. But then Hoshea, son of Elah, mounted a conspiracy against Pekah, son of Remaliah. He assassinated him and took over as king. This was the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah. The rest of the life and times of Pekah, everything he did is written in the Chronicles of the king of Israel. Jotham of Judah. In the second year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, Jotham, son of Uzziah, became king in Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, ruled 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jerusha, daughter of Zadok. He acted well in God's eyes, following the steps of his father Uzziah. But he didn't interfere with the traffic to the neighborhood section. What is it with these neighborhood section religion shrines? Why don't you just tear them down? They continued as popular as ever. The construction of the high gate to the temple of God was his work. The rest of the life and times of Jotham, the record of his work, is written in the Chronicles of the kings of Judah. It was during these years that God began sending Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, to attack Judah. Jotham died and joined his ancestors. They buried him in the family cemetery in the city of David. His son Ahaz was the next king. This is